Some bandwagons are worth jumping on. I think it's fair to say that the rise of the internet is one of the best things to happen in the last few decades. Not necessarily the best, but certainly one of the best, and it really would be a shame if something happened to change that. Well, something is happening to change that, and most probably for the worse. Let's see what's going on. In the old days, when the internet was first getting its start, you paid for it much in the same way that you paid for your phone service, which back then was usually connected with how long you were using it. This made sense. A phone call is basically an internet connection with a constant flow of data, so you'd pay for how much of a strain you were on the system. Your phone provider didn't listen to your calls, I think. They didn't choose who you were and weren't allowed to talk to, and they didn't charge more to talk to specific people. And this carried over into the early days of the internet. Your ISP didn't spy on you constantly, they didn't stop you looking at specific websites, and they didn't charge you more depending on where your data was coming from. The problem, I think, is that this wasn't out of the goodness of their hearts. It was just because they hadn't thought to do so yet, and so, as time went on, they began to do exactly these things. Websites and apps got blocked because an ISP would disagree with them, or because they offered a competing service. Thanks to recent legislation, ISPs may now look at everything you do and sell information on your activities to whoever they want, and a few years ago, one of the big ISPs announced its plan to charge extra money for websites if they wanted their traffic to have priority over the traffic of other sites. Well, that last one was a pretty big straw, camels became crippled, and people protested this move loudly, and as a result, the FCC reclassified the internet as a public utility, or Title II as it's occasionally called. According to the courts at the time, this was the only way that the ISPs could reasonably be prevented from blocking content or slowing down the access of people they didn't like. Otherwise, access to internet was no longer a right and anyone can be blocked or charged extra or slowed down. And before Title II classification happened, this was something that did happen. Verizon, for example, throttled Netflix, and AT&T, Sprint, and Verizon all blocked Google Wallet. Do you like having VoIP services like Skype or Discord? Because those were being blocked by AT&T between 2007 and 2009, because AT&T didn't like that they competed with cell phones. Now this was about 2 years ago, but this is a battle that pops up periodically and it's here again. In about 10 days, as of typing this, or really, now as of recording this is going to be voted on. The FCC wants to repeal the Title II classification, changing it back to Title I, and if the ISPs return to their planned courses of action from the pre-Title II days, then they could start to drive anyone they don't like out of business and block the speech of anyone they disagree with. They've tried to do this before. So, I think I've painted a pretty good picture of what was happening, how it changed, and what could go wrong if it changes back. So, what can we do about this? If you're not American, not much. Canadians, keep watching. I have something I'd like you to do at the end of this. But if you are American, can I point you to some petitions and ask you to call the relevant people? Congressmen and women? The FCC? Write to them? I know I have only 45 subscribers, but I'll include a whole bunch of links in the description, and it would make me so happy if you followed them. If you're American, I know it might not seem like petitions do much, and it might be disheartening talking to congressmen who seem like they don't care about what you think, but please, it would mean the world to me. Okay, now, Canadians, there's not a lot we can do about that, but guess what? The CRTC is talking about a similar thing right now. I've included a link so that you can give your opinion to them. Now, I may hate the CRTC with the same burning vengeance with which most Canadians hate them, but they seem to be a bit more sympathetic to net neutrality right now, and communicating to them that you support the protection of net neutrality, well, this is a war on all fronts, fight it on all fronts. And if you're not American or Canadian, thanks for listening. I'm sorry that this continent is so screwed up, and I hope you end up having a better time of it. Thanks for listening. I'll return to Let's Plays with spaceships and lasers next weekend. Hope you have a nice weekend. Now let's all do our part. Outro, outro, outro!